I continued my conversation with Howard Storm with his insights into his life as it was before his near-death experience and as he lives his life now. Sometimes, in order to understand what is light, you have to understand a little about darkness. Howard begins his insight by reflecting on those he encountered in hell, as well as what his life was like that led him there in the first place.
These people who had rejected God had, sadly, in their rejection of God, rejected everything that God gives us that we take for granted. And God gives us love, God gives us joy, God gives us light, God gives us hope, God gives us the creation, the world, and in their world, all those things are absent. All as they have is their existence themselves, which is what they had lived for in this world, for their own self-gratification, and the company of people they were with ended up being basically people seeking to dominate and torment one another. Evil finds God unbearable. I mean, because that is in fact what evil is that which rebels against God.
In this modern age, there is such a clear and intentional anger toward even the mentioning of Jesus. It is deemed insensitive and intolerant by a self-proclaimed tolerant and enlightened culture.
When you think about it, I think rationally, why are people so offended by Jesus? You know, Jesus is arguably, but I think you can make a very convincing argument, probably the most influential individual that's ever lived on the face of the earth. I don't think it's hard to make that argument and make it convincingly. And like his whole message was about love. So why are people so hostile to him? I mean, we're talking about, and I don't mean this to be demeaning, but in a worldly sense, because of course I believe in his divinity, that he was the Son of God, but put that aside for a minute, if we can, that he was an itinerant rabbi from Galilee, not even respected by the Judeans. He preached love. So where's the offense? Who was murdered by the Romans? You know, where's the offense? Why are people so hostile to him?
I asked Howard about his attitudes toward Christianity before his experience. Was he antipathetic towards Christianity and faith in God, or just merely indifferent? Much of his response answers the previous question of why people are so hostile towards God in the first place. Is there really such a thing as an atheist, or is it someone who is simply terribly angry and disappointed with God?
There was inside of me real hostility towards Christianity because looking back, I didn't have this kind of insight into myself at the time, but looking back, I wanted God. I believe that everybody in the world wants God. I believe that since we have all originated with God and that this world is infused with God in some mysterious way, that everybody needs, desires, craves God in their heart. But there are many people in this world who have become disillusioned, angry, disappointed with God for their own individual reasons. The way that I was in our society made me successful. And my career path, since I changed, has been from societal standards all downhill. For example, I think my ex-wife would be happy to tell you that I'm the biggest loser in the world. My income is a small fraction of what it used to be, and I don't have any galleries showing my work.
Ultimately, we make it all a lot more complicated than it needs to be. Exploring God's love in an academic sense is fine, but what Jesus wants of us and for us is very simple. We get caught up in being religiously pedantic about it all, which separates us from God's original hope for us.
Jesus basically wants us to be compassionate people and to care about each other and to care for each other. That's really what he wants. He wants us to enjoy life, and so much of what we judge people by is of no consequence to God whatsoever. In Kentucky, there's a saying, I don't smoke and I don't chew and I don't go out with girls that do. Frankly, God could care less about that stuff. I mean, and if a person wants to feel self-righteous by that kind of superficial behavior, that's sin. Because self-righteousness is a way of isolating ourselves from other people. It turns them into they, and since they are people that we don't want to associate with, they are people that we don't want to care about. In God's eyes, there are no us and them. I mean, I guess one way you could put it, we're all equal sinners, so get over it. And, what can you do to a person? I think St. Paul puts it very well when he says, all my works are but filthy rags before holy God. So, we're all on a level playing field. We're human beings, we're very flawed beings. Let's just do the very best we can, and that is what God wants from us, is just to do the best that we can, to be as kind to one another as we can, to be as joyful, to be appreciative of God's creation, to enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the apple that we have the opportunity to have, to care for the creation, and that's what God put us in this world to do.
Howard has relayed his experience of life after the body's death and other strange things like life elsewhere in the universe. Talking about this with others, I have encountered a lot of self-righteous condescension by people who think they have it all figured out and find such possibilities theologically incorrect.
It's shocking because those people are always religious people. And why would religious people want to put limits on God's creativity? I mean, why do they have an interest on limiting God? If you have any appreciation of God, the more wonderful and the bigger and greater he is, the more you love him.
After Howard had his near-death experience and came back into this world, he was able to see for a short time the interaction of the invisible spiritual world interacting with the reality that we perceive. Angels do indeed exist, and they kept an eye on Howard and still do. But he was also able to see dark spiritual forces interact in our world as well.
And the more I'm aware of this spiritual warfare in the world, the more I'm convinced that it's absolutely real and that I'm missing. The problem is that when you start to do good, you become a target. The spiritual forces have victories. There's people that they've won, and they are not oppressing them. They own them. They're after people that they want to win over to their side. So as long as you're trying to support the cause of God, there's forces that are going to be up against it. Like, when you're a kid, and you find an old abandoned building, the first thing you want to do is pick up rocks and break out all the windows. I remember my friends finding an abandoned barn once, and we busted out every single window in the barn with rocks. I'm just like, why did we do that? Because it's in our nature, it's in our nature as, we were children, and it was a bad thing to do, but it's what little boys do.
Right.
But love is the most important word in my vocabulary today as a Christian. We need to protect ourselves, we need to protect our families, we need to protect our homes. and we need to fight the fight. We need to battle the battle. I could not live without the church in my life. I need an opportunity to worship. Obviously, I can worship and pray without a church, but I need the spiritual strength and fortitude that I get by participating in church. My wife and I belong to the church choir, and we have choir practice once a week, and choir practice is a wonderful worship opportunity because there we are trying to improve the quality of our worship, because there's an old saying that a prayer sung is twice as strong as a prayer spoken. Prayers of the church, I want the prayers of other people. When something's going on in my life or in my wife's life, I ask people to pray for me, for us, for her.
In Howard's book, he spoke a few times of suffering from depression before he encountered Christ. Deep depression is something I have endured and battled in my own life, and it is a devastating darkness upon the soul as well as the mind. It is a mercurial devastation that the author Andrew Solomon called the noonday demon, after a passage from Psalm 91 for which his book is named. I asked Howard to talk a little bit about how depression affected the soul, which is something the medical sciences often dismiss.
C.S. Lewis said one of the greatest tricks of the evil one is to get people to think that he walks around in a red union suit with a tail and horns. I believe in spiritual warfare, and that God has given us a world with a lot of good, but also so that we can grow and learn and make choices and develop character and discern there is spiritual evil in the world, that which is opposed to good, so that we live in a world that has opposing forces going on. And we, as we mature spiritually, need to know how to combat the evil forces, the demonic forces in the world, because they want to oppress us, they want to defeat us. Evil works in lots of ways. One of the ways is illness, and a lot of the ways is in subtle things like depression, which is an oppressing spirit. And these spiritual forces need to be fought spiritually. You know, Paul talks about this stuff a lot in his letters, that the powers and principalities that we're fighting against are spiritual. They're not real. And so there's people, there's demonic beings, there's evil spirits, forces that will be trying to destroy you. And what a great tool to send a spirit of oppression on you, to put you into a depression is really wonderfully destructive form of oppression, because when you become depressed, you even isolate yourself. You don't even seek help. I mean, and depression's very common.
Often in life, we resort to a natural instinct to overcome circumstances with stronger, faster, smarter responses to that which we want to control. It struck me as interesting that when Howard was in his hellish state, that no chance of rescue even occurred to him or was offered to him, until he was so stripped of strength that he had no ability or even will left to offer opposition. I asked him if he considered that the only way to be ready for Christ and his love was through the destruction of his own ego and strength, and to submit to a rescue that could only come from God and His grace and power, and not that of our own choice or will.
I see the experience as having ego consciousness, my defensiveness, attacked and destroyed. So I see it as a great gift. And people in AA tell me that the only way that an alcoholic is ever going to seek help, seek sobriety, is when they hit the gutter, when everything that they've been trying, which is a strategy to protect yourself. I mean, that's why people become alcoholics, is it's a way of, and that's, alcohol is an anesthetic. Mm-hmm. And you take the anesthetic to protect yourself, to try and protect yourself from pain, the pain of life, being hurt. When at some point you finally realize it's a disaster and it's not working at all, then you begin to think maybe God might be a better solution than being intoxicated. The metaphor that I used was when I was a kid, I liked knights. You know, when a little boy, I used to make armor with cover cardboard with aluminum foil and, you know, dress up like a knight and stuff like that. So the way the metaphor I use is I see myself as a child building a suit of armor around myself of ego, of control, of independence, of indifference to other people. And the problem is that as you grow, the armor doesn't grow. The defense mechanisms that you've developed to protect yourself against emotional pain don't grow with you, so you end up responding inappropriately to life, because ultimately what life is should be about and could be about is being open to the whole world as much as possible without completely losing your mind. So allowing other people's experience to be your experience, allowing God to be God and to inform you and to direct you, giving up a lot of control and being selective about what you defend yourself against. In other words, instead of being highly selective about what you let in, just the opposite, being highly selective about what you don't allow yourself to let in, and becoming more and more empathetic. So the way that we open ourselves up is, one, by looking at our traumas, our fears, our terrors, our anxieties, and looking at all that stuff and looking at where it came from. If we don't, it's just going to control us. It's just going to run our lives. So it's a matter of wanting to make a choice, and the choice is to look into ourselves, and particularly look into the scary, shadowy places that we don't want to look at, and deal with those things. And the other thing is to put faith, hope, and trust into something other than ourselves. A lot of it has to do with being self-analytical. Interestingly, I have kind of found people fall into two categories. There's people that are interested in being analytical about their lives and themselves, and there are people that avoid it like a plague. And there are some people that seem to completely lack any insight into themselves because they don't choose to go there. They don't want to look. In a way, they're afraid of what they're going to find. Like I had a friend of mine who once told me there's a big monster inside of me, and if I ever went and looked at it, it would destroy me. And I tried to tell him, I said, you know that big scary monster that's inside of you? It's a phantom, and if you ever looked at it, it would turn into a puff of smoke and disappear.
Death is something that most of us fear. Some fear it to the point of a living paralysis of enjoying God's gifts of life and learning. What encouragement would Howard have for those who fear death?
In the mission work that I did, one of my good friends down there, who's a guy who spent a lot of his life involved in the drug trafficking business and made money, he's a Belizean guy. guy that I love very much. He's no longer involved in that stuff. He told me one day, he said, you're in danger every day you're down here. And I said, why? And he said, well, everybody knows you have money in your pocket. And he said, there's people down here that don't care that you're a pastor. They don't care that you're trying to help people. He said, there's people down here that want the money in your pocket. And they would think nothing of coming up behind you and shooting you in the back of the head or slitting your throat for what's in your wallet. And he said, you need to be careful. And I said, well, I do try and be careful. I try and be reasonable. But I said, I can't live in fear. I choose not to live in fear. So I guess I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And if they want to kill me for what's in my wallet, be my guest, because I have nothing to lose. I said, anybody that kills me is sending me home. And so if I die, I win. If I live, I win. So I'm in a win-win situation, because I don't have any fear of death, and also I trust God. According to what I've read, the number one fear in the world is fear of death. And it's really an important topic, because I think that people are not only have a tremendous fear of death, but I think that they really mess up their lives and their opportunity to experience life because of their fear of death, so that they seek substitutes for life in the hope that they can avert death somehow, so that they have inauthentic lives. To get people to know who they are, who God is, and what the relationship between us and God is the antidote to fear of death. Jesus did what he did as God's ultimate display of why we should not fear death. Jesus embraced death. He didn't just embrace death, he embraced the worst death that his world knew could be inflicted on another human being. Christ on the cross has become so common that people don't think too much about it. But the Roman Empire was really into killing people. Matter of fact, it was their really primary form of mass entertainment, was all kinds of strange and unusual ways to kill people. He allowed himself to be murdered and then said, guess what? I am more powerful than any of this stuff, and I offer you eternal life in his resurrection. This is not what you need to fear.
In the past few years, I have read many books and particularly enjoyed several movies that were centered around our true place in the universe and God's plan. As someone who got to experience Christ, the angels, and the afterlife firsthand, I wondered how many Howard thought were accurate and did a good job of relaying God's love and desire for our lives. I particularly enjoyed the book The Shack by William P. Young and wondered what his unique perspective was of it.
Well, I thought it was delightful. I think that the person who authored that did a really great job of challenging a lot of Christians in their traditional thinking and presenting God as a black woman who loved to cook and stuff like that. I mean, I thought that was really great stuff, and anything that makes people think about God in a positive way, which I think that book thoroughly does. It's funny that some people were offended by it, and it's like, oh, get over it.
As a filmmaker, I love great films as well on this topic. I mentioned the Robin Williams film, What Dreams May Come, and the old Richard Dreyfuss John Goodman movie, Always. as my personal favorites, but one movie in particular is his favorite. The 1990 Patrick Swayze Demi Moore film, Ghost.
The theme of Ghosts is to love one another. I mean, that's what Patrick Swayze is learning in his whole experience. Is remember when before he died, when his girlfriend would say, "I love you," he'd say, "Ditto." I mean, he couldn't even. She seemed like a very adorable woman, and he couldn't even give her the "I love you" back. I mean, he was so kind of like unable to really express his love. And then, of course, after he died, it was like he desperately wanted to communicate his love to her. And that's why he was given that opportunity of hanging out for a little while, basically. Because the end of the movie is this beautiful near-death experience scene where he's being welcomed by all the angels up and away. Remember all the figures appearing in the light and greeting him, and him, leaving the world. It was a really powerful scene. I loved it. I thought that movie was exquisite, really fine.
The Christian poet and mystic John O'Donohue defines sin not as the acts we do typically categorized as sin, but as instead a woundedness that we refuse to let God heal. Then poison comes from those wounds. Every day, we struggle with how to rid ourselves of our failures and inadequacies in dealing with sin. It is a constant frustration of mine, and I ask Howard how we can allow God to heal us.
I tell people all the time, and I do it myself, I visually imagine myself handing stuff to Jesus. My anger, my frustration, my weariness, my laziness, my hopes that aren't going to be met. We were talking earlier about like my mission work, and how I hoped someone was going to lay hundreds of thousands of dollars on me, and it never happened. And so, I've accomplished something in my mission work. Haven't accomplished 1/100th of what I imagined I could have done, if only, which never didn't happen, and it's never going to happen. Anyways, I just give everything over to him. I give him my badness, I give him my madness, I give him my gladness, I give him everything. It's like, okay, I got problems, I'm imperfect, here, Jesus, take it all. I'm dumping the whole stinking mess of my life in your capable arms, and it all belongs to you, and I'm just going to proceed to do the best that I can with what I got. And I hope that Jesus knows that I totally appreciate him, and I am, in my clumsy best, fumbling along, trying to follow what I think would please him. I don't do stuff because it's going to win his favor, or it's going to win me points, or it's like the price of the ticket home. It's not that. That's not the motivation. It's just that I like him a lot. He likes me a lot, and I want to please him. I like my wife, and I do things to please her. And you know what? Some of the things that I do to please her aren't things that I particularly want to do. Like, I got to go around the house and empty all the trash cans today and put the trash out because tomorrow's trash day. You know what? I really don't get a kick out of doing the trash, but I'm going to do it because it's a good thing to do, but I also know that it pleases her to see the trash emptied, and have the trash taken out. And she works hard, and she doesn't really need to be I do that. I'm making dinner for my grandsons tonight, and my wife, and stuff like that. And, I enjoy that, but I do it. I've told my grandsons. I've said to them, my words. You know why I do this? Because I love you, and I want you to know that. And by making these meals, I hope you understand. It's my way of showing that I loved you. Do you get it? And they go, yeah, we know, Grandpa. And I'm going, okay, I just want to make sure that you understand why you come over here on Monday night and eat. I want you to understand why you're doing that, That's it. I like being around you.
My time with Howard came to a close. We had already exceeded the time allotted for the interview, and I wanted more. I could have spent all day with him and came away wishing I could do more to tell people about his amazing experience and share his wisdom with a deeply wounded and troubled world. His book, My Descent into Death, A Second Chance at Life, is available in bookstores and on Amazon in both print and Kindle versions, and explores his experience and new life in greater detail. I hope these interviews have given the viewer some perspective, hope, and motivation to both give and receive love that is our proper destiny and calling.